Hello guys, welcome back to my After Effects tutorial channel. This is Randy from Rhandz Graphix, and today I'm gonna be sharing with you some ideas on how to create this. As usual guys, let me begin by creating a new composition, and I will name it placeholder 1. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, and the duration is 10 seconds. Click OK. Open folder assets, open the winter video clips, choose this video clip number 1, drop it down into the timeline. Press S on your keyboard for the scale it down. Go to composition, create a new composition. I will name it text 1. I will change the width to 1000 and the height is 200. 30 frames per second and 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Then I will grab the text tool and type Wonders of Winter, all caps. Center it horizontally, and I'm using Franklin Gothic regular at 80 pixels. The lead is 97. Then I will again grab my text tool and type slideshow, all caps. Center it horizontally. I'm using Futura BKBT font book 43 pixels. The lead is 97. I will move my playhead forward to 1 second duration. Highlight this slideshow. Press open bracket key to move that layer. Then I will expand this slideshow. Click this animate. Choose the opacity and change the opacity amount here to 0. Open range selector 1. Make a keyframe on the start. Move your playhead to 3 seconds duration and change the start amount to 100%. Then I will click this add a property and choose blur. I will change the amount of blur to 40%. See? Now I'm gonna go back to the animate and choose tracking. Then I will change the amount tracking to 32. Move my playhead back to the 1 second duration and click this tracking amount to create a keyframe. Then move forward your playhead to 4 seconds duration. Change the tracking amount to 0. Now expand this Wonder of Winter text. Go to animate and go to opacity. Change the opacity amount here to 0. Open the range selector 1. Make a keyframe on the start. Move back your playhead to the 15 frames duration. Move this keyframe on that duration. Move forward your playhead to 3 seconds duration. Change the amount on the start to 100%. Click this tiny triangle icon and choose blur. Change the blur to 40. Now go to your folder assets, open it up, go to image and choose this snowflake. I will just drag it here on the small icon to create a composition. Then I will drag it down, create a new folder, and I will name it common comps. Then I will drag the snowflake on that folder. Go to composition, create a new composition. I will name it snowflake particles. I will change the width here to 120 by 1080p. 30 frames per second and 10 seconds duration. Click OK. I will drag these snowflake particles to the common comps folder. Then go to layer and create a new solid, and I will name it particles. Click OK. Go back to my project panel and drop down this snowflake into the timeline. I will disable the visibility of this snowflake one and highlight these particles and go to effects and preset. Go to simulation. This is particle world. Then I will change this birth rate to 1.2. The longevity, I will change this to 3. Open producer. Change the radius X to 0.885. The radius Y, I will change this to 0.4885. Open physics and change the velocity here to 0.06. The inherent velocity, I will change this to 112. The gravity, I will change this to 0.001. Then the extra, I will change the amount to 6.76. Then I will open the particle. Change the particle type to textured square. Then open the texture. Change this texture layer to the snowflake one. Change the birth color here. I will just type the code CFF5FE. Then click OK. I will just pick the color picker here and copy this color. Scroll up and go back to the animation. Change this explosive to direction axis. So this is what we got. Go to project panel, then open this pre-rendered sequence, highlight it all, drag it on the composition icon here to create an individual compositions. Make sure that this multiple compositions is highlighted. Click OK. So now I will create a new folder and I will name it pre-rendered comps. Then I will drag these compositions on that folder. Then move it outside of the pre-rendered sequence. Close it. I will create a new folder and I will name it scene 1. I will highlight this placeholder 1, drag it to the send 1 folder. Also this text. Close it. Go to composition, create a new composition. I will name it BG or background transition. (1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second and 10 seconds duration). Click OK. I will open the scene 1 folder. I will drop down this placeholder 1 into the timeline. I will open the folder assets, go to image. I will change the name of this image to texture. Then I will highlight it, drag it down into the composition in order to create a composition. Open the BG transition, drag it down into the timeline just above the placeholder 1. Drag it into the common comps folder. Then open the pre-rendered comps, choose this animated brush one, drag it down into the timeline. Right click your mouse, go to time, enable time remapping. Extend this layer up to the end of the timeline and also this keyframe. Change the track matte on the texture to alpha inverted matte. Then highlight this texture, go to effects and preset, color correction, tint, and change the map black to, just type this code D199FD. Click OK. Change also the color on the map Y2. Just type the code 270640. Click OK. Then I will go to composition, create a new composition. I will name it animated brush edge 1. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second and 10 seconds duration. Click OK. Go to the project panel and drop down this animated brush 1 into the timeline. right click your mouse, go to time, enable time remapping. Extend this layer up to the end of your timeline and also the keyframe. Highlight the animated brush one and press your keyboard Ctrl D to duplicate it. Move your playhead to 8 frames. Then press open bracket key to move that layer. Now change the track matte here to Luma inverted matte. Highlight the animated brush one above. Press S on your keyboard with the scale. Change the scale to 96%. We will move forward our playhead. Let's see. There's an edge in here. That's what we want. Okay. So I will open the BG transition. I will double click the placeholder one to change the time frame. Right click my mouse, go to time, enable time remapping. Extend this layer up to the end of the timeline and also the keyframe. Then go back to the BG transition, go to your project panel and highlight this animated brush edge one and drag it down into the timeline. As you can see, it's bigger than the animated brush one. So all I have to do is to press S on my keyboard for the scale and scale it down to 92%. Then I will enable the 3D layer on the placeholder one. Then I'm gonna go to layer and create a new null object. Press S on my keyboard with the scale. Move your playhead to the 3 seconds duration and create a keyframe by hitting this stopwatch on the scale. Move forward your playhead to the 10 seconds duration and change the scale here to 115. I will highlight the animated brush edge one and the animated brush one. Parent it to the null object. So now I'm gonna go to composition and create a new composition. I will name it media 1. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second and 10 seconds duration. Click OK. I will drag it down into the scene 1 folder. Close this pre-rendered for now. Go to the project panel and highlight this BG transition. Drag it down into the timeline. Then drag this BG transition to your scene 1 folder. Close it. Then open the pre-rendered comps folder and drop down this transition matte 2 into the timeline. Move your playhead probably 10 frames and press open bracket key to move that layer. Then right click your mouse, go to time and enable time remapping. I will just extend this layer up to the end of the timeline and also the keyframe. Then I will change the track matte here to alpha matte. Toggle switches mode in here. I want these two to be 3D layers. So I will highlight these two. Press my keyboard Ctrl D to duplicate it. Now go to your project panel and open these common comps and highlight these snowflake particles. Drop it down into the timeline. Then highlight this transition matte 2. Press your keyboard Ctrl D to duplicate it. Drag it up. Move this layer to the beginning of your timeline. Extend the layer here to the end of your timeline. Change the track matte here to alpha matte. Now go back to your project panel and drop down this particles one into the timeline. Go to effects and preset. Go to color correction, tritone. Change the color code here on the midtones to 39388A. Click OK. And also change the shadows, type 3B254C. And click OK. Now highlight this transition matte 2 below. Press your keyboard Ctrl D to duplicate it. Drag it up above the particles 1. And enable the visibility of the transition matte 2. Highlight the particles 1 and Ctrl D on your keyboard to duplicate it. Drag it up above the transition matte 2 and change the track matte here to Luma inverted matte. Highlight the transition matte 2. Go to effects and preset. Go to color correction. Then change the map white to black. Then move your play to the 7 seconds duration. Highlight these both compositions. Press your keyboard open bracket E to move those layers. Then go back to your project panel. Open the scene 1 folder and drop down the text one into the timeline. Move back your play to 2 seconds and 20 frames. And press open bracket key to move that layer. Then go to layer, create a new solid. Click OK. Press open bracket key to move that solid. Change the track matte here to alpha matte. As you can see, now all we have to do is to highlight this text and go to effects and preset, go to color correction, then and change the map white to this code 3B254C. Then click OK. So now I'm gonna go back to my project panel. I will drop down this animated handwriting one into the timeline. Then go to effects and preset, go to color correction, then change the map white 35, 22, 45. Click OK. Pick this color picker on the map black, copy this color. Highlight this animated handwriting one. Move back my blade to 3 seconds and 7 frames. Press my keyboard open bracket key to move that layer. Then right click my mouse. Enable time remapping. I'll just extend this layer up to the end of the timeline and also the keyframe. I will press P on my keyboard for the position. I'll just move the handwriting on this side as shown, just like that. As you can see here, it's not that dark, so all I have to do is to go to effects and preset and add drop shadow. Make the distance here to 0. I'll just drag it on the right side a bit. Then I will close it and enable the 3D layer. I will highlight this animated writing one, press my keyboard Ctrl D to duplicate it, then move my blade to 2 seconds and 20 frames and press open bracket key to move that layer. Then extend this layer up to the end of my timeline. Press U on your keyboard to see the keyframes and move this keyframe at the end of the timeline. Disable first the 3D layer, highlight the handwriting one above and move it on the lower right side corner of your canvas. Just like that. Now you can enable the 3D layer now. Press P on your keyboard for the position, adjust it closer to the camera. Just like that. If you can see a little bit of bleeding in here, all you have to do is to go back to BG transition, highlight this texture, press this on your keyboard for the scale and make the scale here 100%. So now you have to go back to media 1 and see it's gone. Now I'm gonna go to layer, create a new null object. I will enable the 3D layer on the null object. Press P on my keyboard for the position, move my blade to the 2 seconds and 20 frames. Create a keyframe by hitting this stopwatch on the position. Forward your blade to 9 seconds duration. Change this Z position closer to the camera. So I will just type -395. I will highlight this animated handwriting one just below and parent it to that null object. Then I will go again to layer and create a new null object. Drag it up above the null object 2, enable the 3D layer, press P on my keyboard for the position, move my playhead back to the 2 seconds and 20 frames, then create a keyframe by hitting this stopwatch on the position, move my playhead forward to 7 seconds and 15 frames, change the Z position here to 535, highlight this animated handwriting 2, parent it to the null object 3. So let's try to preview it. So as you can see in here that the text is visible. All we have to do is to highlight the text one, press T on your keyboard for opacity, move your playhead back to 7 seconds and 24 frames. Make a keyframe on the opacity, then move forward your playhead to 9 seconds. Change the opacity here to 0. Then as you can see, there is still an image visible on this time frame. All you have to do is to highlight the BG transition, click T on your keyboard for opacity, then move your playhead probably 8 seconds duration. Create a keyframe by hitting this stopwatch on the opacity and move forward your playhead to 9 seconds. Change the opacity to 0. Scroll down, highlight this BG transition below. Press T on your keyboard for opacity. Make this opacity 0, create a keyframe, move back your playhead to the 8 seconds duration and change this opacity to 100%. Highlight these 2, animated handwriting 1. Press T on your keyboard for opacity, forward your playhead to 8 seconds duration, make a keyframe on the opacity and move your playhead forward to 9 seconds duration and change the opacity here to 0. So now our only problem here is we want the brush to be 2 seconds and 20 frames duration. Brush will start to come in. All we have to do is to go back to the BG transition and highlight this animated brush edge. Right click your mouse and enable time remapping. Move your playhead to the 2 seconds and 20 frames and move this keyframe on that duration. As you can see, highlight this animated brush one. Press U on your keyboard to see the keyframes and move this keyframe on the 2 seconds and 20 frames duration. Now go back to the media one and let's preview this again. Let's see. If you can see that the image is just like this, all you have to do is to go back to the BG transition, open it up, highlight these two compositions, the animated brush edge and the animated brush. Press S on your keyboard for the scale and make sure that this scale is 100%. So as you can see, so all you have to do is to go back to the media one. Look at this, it's gone. So now I'll go back to my project panel. Close these pre-rendered comps and common comps for now, and also the scene one. So now I'm gonna go and open the pre-rendered comps. Highlight this animated brush one and drop it into the scene one folder. Animated brush edge 1, particles 1, transition matte 2, and the animated handwriting 1. I will create another folder and I will name it scene 2. Highlight all these compositions and drop it down into the scene 2 folder. Then delete these pre-rendered comps. Then open the scene 1 folder. I will highlight this BG transition and by pressing Ctrl on my keyboard, I will also select this media 1, the placeholder 1 and the text 1 and also the brush edge. Go to edit, duplicate it. Drag these duplicated compositions into your scene 2 folder. Then I will highlight all these compositions and double click my mouse to open it up. Delete compositions that you don't want to tweak. Delete this footage. Go to my assets folder, open the winter video clips, choose this number 2 footage, drop it down into the timeline. Close this. Open the BG transition 2 and highlight this placeholder 1. Press my keyboard Alt and hold it. Replace placeholder 1 to placeholder 2. Replace all the compositions from scene 1 to compositions scene 2. So now I'm gonna go open my media 2, close this, press my keyboard Alt and hold it, replace all the compositions from scene 1 to compositions scene 2. I might probably go back to my scene 1 folder and drag down this text 2 to the scene 2 folder. I will open the text 2 composition and move forward my playhead to see the text and double click this Wonders of Winter text and I will change this to winter. Align it horizontally. Then I will double click this slideshow to change the text. I will change it to fun. Align it horizontally. So now I'm gonna go back to the media 2, press my keyboard Alt and hold it, replace the text 1 to text 2. This animated handwriting 1, I will highlight both of them and replace it with the animated handwriting 2. So for the sake of this tutorial, I will not change the location of these two handwriting. Now I will create a new composition and I will name it main. 1920 by 1080p, 30 frames per second, and the duration, I will change it to 18 seconds, click OK. Then I will open the scene 1 folder, I will drop this media 1 into the timeline. Then open scene 2 folder, drop down the media 2 into the timeline. Move your playhead to the 9 seconds duration and press open bracket key to move the media to layer. Then go back to the project panel and open this project assets. Go to footage and highlight this to footage. I'll just drop it here to create the compositions and click OK. Drag these compositions down into the timeline. Highlight both of these compositions and change this blending mode to add. Highlight the leaks, press S on your keyboard to the scale it up just enough to cover the canvas. Press T on my keyboard for opacity. I will change the opacity here to 15% and highlight the glitter one. Press T on my keyboard for opacity. I will change the opacity here to 18%. Highlight these leaks, right click on my mouse, time, and enable time remapping. I will move my layer further at the end of my timeline. Move the keyframe. So let's try to preview this. It seems we have to go back to the scene 1 folder and open the media 1 and the BG transition. So this is a problem. All we have to do is to go to the BG transition and go to the brush edge 1. Let's see. So press your keyboard out and hold it. Change the animated brush to animated brush 1. Open the main. Let's preview this again. So now we are done guys with our tutorial. I hope that you like it. Be sure to subscribe my channel for those people who have not yet subscribed. Like and share it to your friends if you would like. And my thoughts for today guys is that learning is a great factor to consider to improve yourself. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time. God bless.